Do you want the good news first or the bad news? The bad news is not many organizations are really thriving when it comes to their workforce in human services. The good news is every organization that I've talked with, met, or heard about that puts their foot down and says, we are going to win when it comes to our workforce, makes outstanding progress. It might not happen overnight. It might take multiple iterations. In fact, it probably will. But I've never seen an organization that says the buck stops here. We're doing something about this until we get it to a much better place. I've never seen one of those not eventually get a healthier, more thriving workforce. Welcome to IDD Leader, where human services leaders grow their impact, lead with heart, and build the workplaces our field deserves. I'm your host, Nate Beers. Let's dive in. Today, I'm going to talk with you about lessons I've learned in 2025 that I'll be carrying into 2026, and hopefully will be carrying you into 2026. These are lessons I've learned from specific conversations I've had here on the podcast over the course of this year. I might not be able to highlight every conversation I've had, but I'm going to at least highlight a number of them so that you don't just hear me talking about theory. I mean, listen, I've got, some cool phrases that I've picked up along the way, but I want to paint a picture and give you a little bit of context. And more than anything else, I want to share with you real solutions that I've heard from real providers that are trying to have a more stable, healthier, thriving workforce. In other words, less turnover, fewer vacancies, and more than just the stats, although they want the stats too. They're looking to create an environment where people who come to work there can live a good life, just like the people that are being supported, right? This is your best life ever. We want that for our staff as well. That's a common denominator. All right, let's go with these. The first organization I want to highlight is Vocational Training Center out of Fargo, North Dakota. They have created an outstanding onboarding experience. Even when their colleagues and peers in the field were saying, there's no way you're going to be able to pull that off, they decided, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but they decided that they were going to do practically all of their onboarding in person, as in live trainers, live interaction. And they weren't just sitting around having trainings for day after day. They would do little segments of training, and then they would have their new staff job shadow, get right out there meeting the individuals being supported. And then about 2 weeks later, they did what they called reverse job shadowing, which is where the new staff or new hires are starting to display the skills paired with a mentor who then is giving them feedback and encouragement and, guiding them if they're not quite doing something right along the way. So there's this robust, very connected, interpersonal interactions. The whole process, just outstanding. I think they call it something like their roadmap to success. And when others said it couldn't be done, they somehow managed to pull it off. And as far as I know, they're still doing it to this day. That interview was episode 24, if you'd like to check it out. And all the interviews I mentioned, I will put in the show notes. If you want to go back and check out those episodes, you're more than welcome to do so. Let me tell you about Welcome House and what I learned from Welcome House. They're based out of Cleveland, Ohio. I talked with a number of their DSPs, the direct support professionals that are on their DSP council. And what I learned is that a DSP council, when done right, creates an exceptional empowerment experience. Okay, I don't think I didn't write that down, but the triple E, that was kind of cool. I wish I would have thought of that smart ahead of time, but it just sort of flowed. They've created an exceptional empowerment experience for their direct support professionals. It's an outstanding channel of feedback for those that are in that frontlines position from direct support professionals. They can go to someone on the council. They can themselves join the council and kind of get their issues or their concerns heard at the top level of that organization. It is a way to, it works on bringing issues up, but it also really helps with communication for initiatives that may be getting rolled out from management or from the executive level that they've got a whole group of people that they can kind of bounce things off of before they roll it out in full. And that's extremely valuable for them. So, a powerful lesson about when you do it right, creating a DSP council, and they're not the only organization doing this. I talked to others as well that are doing it. When it's done right, can yield some huge dividends for your workforce. So, kudos to them. Next, oh, and that was in episode, what was that? Episode 28. All right, next we'll go to episode 33. Core Services is a powerhouse organization. They're kind of smaller ish, and they're in a more rural area in Northeast Tennessee. But if you haven't heard of them, you're going to want to check them out. I learned so much from that interview with their executive director, Nick Filarelli. Core Services has been recognized. They received the Moving Mountains Award several years ago for innovations in their person-centered implementation around enabling technology, allowing individuals supported to live more independently with really, really cool innovations. But our conversation was more along the lines of what they've done with staffing and workforce. One of the things that stands out is that they bit the bullet multiple years ago and they said, we are going to invest so heavily in our staff that they spent, I don't remember if he told me the exact number, but I think it was like, well, I'd better not screw that one up. I'll just say they spent a lot of money over budget when it came to staff training and staff investment. And they did this for, I want to say 2 or 3 years, believing that if they invested really heavily in their staff, they would see a return on that investment. Well, sure enough, they have. They've seen their turnover rate go down. But even more than that, their vacancy rate has dropped to averaging like between 0 to 3% for multiple years, which means that their overtime costs are, I mean, they're not non-existent, but they're super, super low. More than that, their average length of tenure for their staff has gone up dramatically in this time. And what that, of course, translates into is higher quality care, higher quality, better outcomes for those being supported. And it's a staff that loves working there. So they invested this extra money on the front end, but it is paying dividends now. And that's been a recurring theme that I've heard from other organizations as well, is that big investments into staff always have an outstanding return on investment. Could not recommend more that principle. All right. Let's see. What else did I learn this year? Well, when I talked to Dr. Sayard Evans from Arkansas Support Network, I learned about how they're using AI in some cutting edge ways at their organization. No, AI is not coming for your job if you're in human services or a direct support professional or someone that's in leadership in this field. But what AI is doing there is it's allowing them to streamline some of their uh, processes around writing person-centered planning. Now, I understand it's kind of ironic. They're getting more person-centered planning out of partnering with AI than when they were having, before they had this AI tool in place. I'm probably not even doing it justice, but they used some of the ARPA dollars or the COVID relief dollars to invest in technological breakthroughs around using AI. And out of that, they've created now for each person, when they go through each person they support, they go through a process where they get an in-depth interview and partnered with the AI, they're getting these shift guides for DSPs that work with them. They're getting these affirmations that help everyone on the whole team stay focused on what is this person's strengths? What do they care about? What matters to them? And how can we do our best to support them? And along those lines, they've, apart from the AI, they've done some really amazing things like helping get some of the most, let's just say, maybe challenging or most complex needs individuals more independent than anyone ever thought they could get. So huge lessons learned there. That was in episodes 43 and 44. I learned also from CARES of Western PA of how they were able to scale from just 4 employees to 100 employees in about 10 years, which is amazing to me. But as they've scaled, they've made a lot of very intentional decisions to not lose the heart of what makes the CARES way so special. Their ideas when it comes to community integration or having people get connected at their local grocery store, at their local church, in their local social clubs, or whatever else it may be, are outstanding. And then how they listen to their staff, more than just taking a survey, they are very intentional repeatedly on a throughout the year, not just once a year with a survey, but throughout the year, on making sure that they tell staff, hey, tell us what matters to you. Okay, we've heard you. This is what we heard. This is what we're going to do about it. And sometimes it might be something they can't fix, but they have made it a point to be so intentional to keep communicating over and over with their staff, two-way communication, listening, and then also sharing what they're going to do about it. Just outstanding work that they have going on there. When I talked to Dr. Mike Strauss, oh, and I forgot to mention, episodes on that would be 49 and 50. All right. When I talked to Dr. Mike Strauss out of Good Life Innovations in Kansas, this is episodes 53 and 54, I learned more about the power of scheduling than I had any idea about. He has a lot of good one-liners. I probably can't do them justice, but he shares about how when you have a bad schedule, there's this principle called schedule migration, as he calls it, where your longest tenured staff, these are the backbone of your organization, they often want to keep getting the more favorable and more favorable schedule, which is completely understandable. And so then often when you have new hires, you're trying to hire them for those weekend shifts or those challenging shifts to fill. And that ends up perpetuating the churn of new employees that never really get, like, they don't make it past 90 days or they don't make it past 6 months or a year. And what he suggested as the antidote to that was this front half, back half of the week scheduling. Again, I probably can't do it full justice here, but they've created a whole system for this that they've even packaged and are sharing with other organizations. By all means, check them out, where organizations will see these dramatic shifts in how many staff are turning over, in how many vacancies they have, in how many part-time staff. Like, they see an increase in their full-time staff simply by following a different structure around the schedule, where something to the effect of the first 3 days of the week, they've got day and night, so 12-hour shifts. This is, again, for group homes. I don't think I said that clearly. So this is for the 24/7 care. But they have front half of the week, so that's like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Back half of the week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, same thing. They create a pay differential for those that are doing overnight. And then people want to take on extra shifts, but they end up, ironically, interestingly enough, they end up paying so much less in overtime by structuring the shifts these ways, and they end up retaining their staff a lot more than the average provider does. They're getting kind of well known around the nation. They also have won the Moving Mountains Award on a different year. And again, I had no idea how much simply the structural change around shifts can bring about such significant change. So can't recommend them enough. Now, when it comes to another conversation I had, I learned how one question, literally one question, can change everything. That was with Friendship. They're out of North Dakota as well. And this is episodes 55 and 56. They started asking a question at every house meeting, every supervisor meeting, every executive meeting, basically every kind of meeting that they're having. They started asking this question: how have you been welcoming new staff lately? They didn't just ask it as a rhetorical thing. They would create a few minutes of time for everyone to share, or if it was a large meeting, I'm sure it wasn't everybody, but they would create time for people to share what they themselves have done to welcome new staff lately. And by asking that question, not for just like a week or a month, they're like, oh, this is the shiny new object, we'll ask this question for, this quarter. They committed to it for the long term. They ask that question consistently now. They've been doing it for, I want to say it's about 2 years. And somewhere, maybe it's even longer than that, somewhere around, I think it was 18 months or the 2-year mark, they saw their turnover numbers for the first 90 days and the first 1 year. So the percentage of people that make it from day one hiring to 90 days, percentage of people that make it from day one hiring to the 1 year mark, it doubled. So their turnover dropped by 50% or more. Their retention doubled. The biggest thing they attributed it to is asking that question and then all the effects that happen from asking that question. I mean, it's so simple. It's a free strategy that can be absolutely game changing. And it shifted the culture. It's created this energy around everyone's looking for how can I help welcome new people? And what does that do? It brings people in right away, relationally connected, cared for, seen, valued. And of course, then they're going to learn, well, this is how we do things here at Friendship. They're going to get brought in on such meaningful ways. It's a powerful, it's like the simplest solution I think I might have heard of the whole year, and yet so powerful in its impact and its effect. I think I already told you. That's episode 55 and 56. And in case I didn't, there you go. Now I've told you. And I guess the the last big lesson I've learned, it was maybe not so much just from one particular provider, but when I talk to talk to leaders at NADSP, talk to leaders at the National Leadership Consortium on Developmental Disabilities, folks at Human Services Research Institute, at state provider associations. So I talked to leaders on a bunch of different episodes, but one of the biggest things I'm hearing is that this workforce, frontline workforce, is getting much more recognition at the federal level than it ever has before. And hopefully will be getting its own standard occupation classification, SOC, with the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Now, I know that's a lot of words, but what that really means is that when a workforce gets recognized when a profession gets recognized, then resources can flow in ways that they wouldn't have until they get recognized as a profession. As I remember it from statistics, I'm pretty sure that our DSP workforce in our country is something like 800,000 strong. We're talking almost 1 million people are doing this work. That's a lot of people. And so for it to get recognized, and it's the effects of that will be so powerful. It's not over till it's over. So, I want to let up and say, hey, let's do a victory dance when we're not ready for that victory dance yet. But that's not necessarily something for one provider is not going to make that happen on their own. But one of the core messages that kept coming through these conversations with the leaders is how important it is to do some advocacy, to speak up, to call legislators, even invite them to come and see your sites, or to partner up with state provider associations to let our collective voices be heard, or to fill out the state of the workforce survey that comes out and ends up shaping legislation at the federal and at the state level. Wow. Your voice matters. You speaking up matters. Filling out the survey matters. There's this connection that sometimes when we get that bigger picture, at least for me, it really opens up my eyes that there is so much more going on here. And I'm part of something that's so much bigger than me. You're part of something that's so much bigger than you. And sure, we've got differences of some opinions and differences of some priorities, but we're all aligned around how important this workforce is. And one of the ways to help move it forward is that advocacy piece. And so that was a big lesson learned for me. And I learned a lot more about some of the mechanics of that. That's in a lot of the episodes, especially some of the more recent ones. But I'm not going to try to list all the numbers here right now. So my biggest action move I want to leave you with, I always try to leave you with something practical you could just turn around and do right now, is New Year's. I don't even really recommend New Year's resolutions because most of those get broken before we reach January 10th. So I would not frame it to myself that way, or I would encourage you to frame it to yourself that way. But we're looking at 2026. And in fact, unless you listen to this right away, within the first couple of days it comes out, it actually will be 2026 when you're listening to this or beyond. As we're looking at a new year, there's always that kind of thought of like, well, there's new possibilities, new things that could come up. And so my action move for you, and this might sound overly simplistic, but it's to take action. Pick one of these strategies. Pick a strategy you're already doing at your workplace and just work on some continuous improvement. In other words, don't stop now. Don't stop now. That story about the one question at Friendship, they were doing a lot of initiatives. They're still doing a lot of initiatives. It's not that they were doing nothing. They asked one question and that changed everything. It's that they were doing a lot, but that one question created the tipping point. So my action move for you is to keep taking action. You never know when the next tipping point might be reached. This first quarter of the next year, that might be your tipping point when things start to finally go in the direction that you wanted. Maybe you've already been heavily investing in your staff. You've been doing the staff credentialing and the career ladders. You've been doing the mentorship for new employees. That tipping point could be just right around the corner. And so I wanted to leave you with that encouragement and that as your action move, if you will. Lastly, if this episode was encouraging to you or helpful, by all means, I would love for you to share it with a colleague or a friend. And probably they would just like hearing from you anyway. But you can just click send on a text and share this podcast with them, or like or review. These kinds of things just help the next person find it. And one other thing is that I've created a resource. If you are wondering, how much are my frontline supervisors accidentally contributing to turnover? The answer is probably more than you realize. I've created a resource around that identifies 7 key signs or danger signs, really, that your supervisors might be unintentionally contributing to turnover and to staff burnout. You can get that. It's a simple, like 5-minute assessment. You can get that for free at idvleader.com/burnout. And I would love for you to check it out. Well, until next time and until next year, here's to you. Keep up the amazing work.